Hi, welcome to another episode of Straight from the Desk, here from the brand new studio. I hope you enjoyed the first video with how to achieve that moody skin. Here in the second video we will see how we can introduce some nice contrasting colors. So the colors that we find in the face are rather cool, even the red is a rather cool red tone. And I wanted to have something that is almost like a complementary contrast. So we're looking for quite a bright orange here. And I'm introducing that with loads of rust that we're introducing to the metal armor. But let's see how we start with that fantastic worn out metal armor. Alright, so here we are with the armor, or the torso part of our Don Quixote. And I think the sculpt is really fantastic. It looks really like a worn, battle damaged armor that has been in use for many years. And we really want to work on that beaten look of the armor. And we will start with a surprisingly large brush. This here is, I don't even know what size this is, but it might be a size 15 or 16 flathead brush. And we will use that to start with an initial dry brushing to get that metallic texture out. On the palette you can see we have some lead belcher from Games Workshop, some Model Air Chrome, and some Abaddon Black also from Games Workshop. And we will start with some of that lead belcher. Wiping off the surplus of paint really well. And we're still starting on the back to see if we wiped it off enough. And you can see we're still leaving a little bit too much of a texture for my taste. Yeah, much better. And you can really see how wonderful that texture starts to be visible once we have these metallic pigments on there. And there would be a lot of different ways on how you could start it with an armor like that. But here I think really the dry brushing is super helpful, because we can get really all that texture out with almost no work, and then can later on decide what we want to emphasize and where we want to introduce some color variations. Okay, so this is the result that we have from our first dry brushing, and I think we already got quite an impressive look actually on the metal without having to invest any thought here of what we do. I just made sure that during the dry brushing process I went more from up here to the bottom of the model, just to get more of that impact of the sun from the top. But because we really want to get that texture out there, we just also went a little bit back and forth here. Right, in the next step we will mix a brighter shade, or a more metallic shade, using some of the lead belcher and a bit of the chrome. The chrome is super intense, so I'm adding a bit more of the lead belcher here. We're again working with that same super large. Wiping it off again. I might need a bit more on the brush. And this time we're even more trying to just go from the upper direction towards the lower side of the figure. Okay, I think for the dry brushing part that's it, and I really like the result, and let's see how we can refine that a little. Okay, as you can see, I switched back to a normal brush, and I'm working with the Winsor & Newton Series 7 size 1 at the moment, and we want to start picking out some details so it doesn't look like we've just dry brushed the figure. Okay, so let's start with pure chrome highlights. Just using the chrome more or less undiluted as our maximum highlights here. First on those rivets. And then here also carefully here just along the edge of these single plates. Because those upper edges definitely catch a bit of highlight, and it's nice for just the separation of the different parts to highlight them. And then you can decide where you want to put the stronger highlights. So we have our light source coming from this side, so we should also be working like a little bit brighter on that side. So working not with the pure chrome, but with that mixed color that we've been using for the second dry brush. And I'm just introducing that here in this corner, cleaning the brush, and I'm just feathering that out. While that dries, I'm also introducing a second line of highlights here. And now just with a little bit of the lead belcher here to the side. We will be also mixing a darker shade here, just we have something to blend out our additional metallic highlights here even a bit darker. Also first with that brighter shade. Feather it out, just using a bit of water here. So I want that highlight to be rather prominent. I'm using also some pure chrome here, just towards the edge. You see now we really got like a very nice and very defined highlight here on that edge. So I'll also use a bit of pure chrome here. Yeah, we're continuing here, building up the contrast, using some of that darker shade here to sharpen that line. And the nice thing is, because of that textured foundation that we have, we don't really need to soft out all these highlights very, very defined. So we can just go ahead and place our highlights here and there. I think here if we have this highlight from that side, it would naturally also be caught a little bit here on that upper face. But just for separation reasons, I don't want it to be also up here. So I'm focusing the highlight more here on the peak of that stomach curve here, or it's actually above the stomach, but we will keep that scratch here as kind of natural border. Place it and wet blend it here with a little bit of that darker shade. And with a bit of that darker paint in the back of the brush and a little bit of the chrome in the tip of the brush, we can also do a lot of brush with metallics here. And I want that edge here to be quite a bit brighter. You see how nice that actually turned out, and this is something that we also don't like show or do all that often, is like a little brush with metallics. So it's nice to see that it also works out with other colors. And the chrome here of Model Color Air is super intense, so you always got to be a little bit careful of like how well you can actually blend it on the surface, and that water here in the back of the brush really helps to feather it out immediately. Okay, I will continue refining these areas just like that. I will also show it to you how we proceed on one of the arms, but not to bore you guys, just let me finish that before we continue to come back to introduce some color variations. Alright, okay, as you can see, I continued here also with those stronger painted on metallic reflections, quite nicely visible actually here around that area where we really pushed the highlights. Same here, and also those highlights here. This here is like a secondary reflex, this here is like the main reflex matching this one, and I'm going to show you how we place those here on this side. So we're first starting with the lead belcher, between medium and heavy layer consistency. And we're starting to apply that here really rather as a layer, just to have like a solid coat that we can always go back to and blend towards. As the arm here is really quite clearly a visible cylinder, the highlight reflexes also follow the main line. So in the middle here we need a strong reflex that is softened out to both sides, as this is a reflection of the sun as a light source itself. I'm mixing a darker shade here, and you can see here we can still wet blend the two on the surface. And you can see this way we already established, by just using actually the lead belcher, we already established a visible stronger highlight. But now, once we have the chrome in place here, you can see this is really a lot more reflective. And when you just compare the lower part here and this part, you can see we gained quite a bit more of and if you compare this lower part here with the upper part of the shoulder pad, you can see how much more of a reflective metallic look we've created just with that shortly softened out highlight. We can continue here with that darker color in the back of the brush, as a glaze, and some of that chrome in the front. We will apply that here to that upper edge. Okay, we let that dry. And we're continuing here. First, putting like a thin glaze of the dark mixed tone here on the shoulder pad. As we have like more rounded shoulder pad here, we're also going more for that round or almond shaped highlight here in the middle. Okay, we'll let that dry, and in the meantime this here already dried, and we can see that the loaded brush made quite a huge bit of highlight here, and we want to get like a nicer transition here towards that dry brush texture. So I'm just applying like a slightly darker shade the metallic paint here is a thinner glaze on top. And with that darker shade, I'm even softening it out here in the shadow area. Something that we find in a lot of areas in the sculpt are actually these dents in the sculpt, and it's nice to actually pick them out manually. So we will first do that with a little bit of the pure lead belcher, and we're highlighting really here the upper edge of the dent that would catch some highlight of the sun, and I'm pushing that highlight here to the lower side a bit stronger. Feathering that out. And you can see this gives us really a very nice and strong reflective highlight there. And we can continue here, also picking out some of these fantastic details in the sculpt. And by picking out these scratches manually, we get a way more defined look than with just the dry brushing. And this is really nice because we can define how much scratches we want to add and how intense they are, and can play a little bit around with that. So you're not only forced to highlight the ones that you have, but you can go crazy and add additional ones. So it's really up to you how you balance that, but it's good to keep in mind that also the scratches should follow the placement of highlights. So the scratches in the center of attention, close to the highlights that we paint on later on, those also need to be brighter. So in an area like this here where we want to have more shadow, we also need a darker shade for our scratches. Here we also want to use some of that stronger metallic looking color and glaze that also here in the line of our middle highlight. Okay. Something that you can see here is like an additional line of highlights on the arm, and we will also add that here. And we're first doing it again just with the lead belcher, getting like a second line here to shorten the distance of the transitions, to have like a nicer and sparkly metallic look. And we're just softening that out using a bit of the darker paint. And with a bit more black here, we can really nicely dab that out into the shadow area. And so far we've achieved really a nice, very dented and scratched looking metal. And let me just get the head in place to see how that looks color-wise, because this here is just really very neutral. We have only silver tones and black going on, and I think you will see once we have the head in place that we definitely need a little bit more color in here. And I really also said in the beginning, and I really want to go for a rather rusted and dirty look. Okay, and yeah, this is how the figure looks now with the head in place. I really like the look, but we need that color variation that I was just talking about. So you can see on the palette we have some additional colors here. This is the orange rust from Secret Weapon. This is the red rust from Secret Weapon, and back here, which looks kind of like black, but this here is the violet from the Chimera paints. And we will start with that nice orange rust in a light base tone consistency, so it covers quite well. And we will start applying that here to areas where we definitely want some rust. And I really like the look of that upper color, but I think it's also a place that definitely needs a bit of color and some detailing. So first applying it and then just feathering it out with a wet brush. And the nice thing here is if you just use a bit of a color that is matte on top of these metallic colors, you really get a nice feeling of depth also, and you're creating really a strong difference and a strong contrast in the with the matte oxidations and the super bright chrome and metal finish. I'm starting to establish the rust here in areas where I think I would definitely have some. So here in the connection areas between the plates here, also along the rivets, and we can really nicely play with that. So here a little bit of like leaking stains. It's nice to use the color really strategic and have it also like gathering a little bit more in that separating area between the single plates. So also for areas like this here, just have like a thinner glaze in the brush, and we can pull that over really like almost the whole plate without leaving stains. And because we're pulling it downwards, the pigments really nicely gather here at the lower edge. We can intensify that. So here for that plate I will just, or for that armor I will just continue applying like first the orange rust and then also introduce a little bit more of a color variation. I think we can show that in a speed up. It's still interesting to see, but I think you get the concept. And it's just important to really have a little bit of water in the back of the brush so you're able to feather things out nicely, and that you like think a little bit about where would the colors culminate and where would they occur the most, and what would be like the most weathered and rusted bit. So see you with the orange color in place. So this is how the figure looks now with the orange rust in place, and I really like the addition of color here on the armor. We already got a very interesting look, and I just put the head in place to check if the color works well together. And I think if you look here at these red and rosy tones, we definitely need to also take that in account for our armor, and we will do that introducing also glazes of the red rust from the secret weapon range. And this is really nice to have like a variety of different red and orange tones here. We don't need all that much because I did already plenty of weathering with the orange rust, so just a little bit here and there for color variation. Also use the red, which is slightly darker, just for areas like here. Where we have our highlight touching like a shadow area. Same here. And the red is really nice to tone things down, yet to leave somewhat of a color impact. Okay. Just continue like that. I'm just feathering that out here with a clean brush, and I really like that contrast between the blank metallic and the red and the orange tones. Okay, I really like the look of that armor, and I'll just continue a little bit with the red glazes, and yeah. Alright, this is how the armor looks now with the oxidation in place, and I really like the look. I think it would be nice to still have a little bit more color variation going on to also harmonize it with the face. If you remember, we used quite a bit of the violet around the eyes, so I want to have a little bit of that also in the armor to put the two together. Alright, you can see here on the palette we have that wonderful dark violet from Chimera Colors, and we're adding a bit of black here to have it not all that intense. And we're working with a heavy glaze. And we're introducing that more in the shadow area. First placing it and then feathering it out. And with just water in the brush, I'm making sure that I have like a very smooth transition here. And you can see it's not like super visible with the purple, but it has like a very nice impact, and it also creates a little bit like a deeper look. Also here in that indentation here to create like a feeling of depth. And it's quite nice because it knocks down also some of that orange and is really balancing again the surface with also slightly matter shadows. And you can see at the moment this is really just a very light glaze. Okay, so yeah, I really like that, and I think it's very nice to have that balance with the cooler purple and those warm orange tones here from the oxidation on the Armour. And yeah, I hope you liked that tutorial here for that real nice real metal Armour. And I will continue with the shirt off cam, and we'll be back to do the lens together. Alright, okay. This is how the figure looks now with the helmet and the head glued in place, and I think it turned out really nice. Also the light shirt is really nice because it separates the super rusty but yet shiny Armour with like a cleaner and brighter color to separate it from the face. And the thing that's still missing is the lens, and we will take care of that. So this is the lens of the figure, and you can see it's like quite a funny shape. It's actually, it looks like wood from the sculpted detail, so this is definitely not how wood bent. So we want to underline that weirdness with also a nice little freehand on that, but let's establish a wood color first. On the palette you can see we have some Schmincke Titanium White. Here we have some Secret Weapon Alt Matte. Here we have some Secret Weapon Orange Rust. Up here we have some Red Oxide from Chimera Color. Here we have some red from Model Color. And over here we have some Abaddon Black from Games Workshop. I want to mix a tone that is not too vibrant. We're starting to mix the Orange Rust and the black together to create like a very nice, very dark brown. But we don't want to have it too saturated, so we're adding a bit of that rather grayish old matte color. I think that looks fine. And we're starting with our size 2 brush, plenty of paint, and we're working with a heavy base tone consistency. I'm trying to make long brush strokes that follow the wood grain that we paint later on. So even if we leave a little bit of texture from the brush strokes, we can work that in later on. Okay, we let that dry, and we'll be back to establish a first highlight and then go straight for the wood grain. Okay, you can see we have a nice, really also quite matte base color, and we'll start highlighting that, adding some of the Schmincke Titanium White here to the side. And we want a highlight that really runs here along the middle line. We're just sketching that in really rather rough, and with a slightly darker shade we're applying that just next to it here. And also to the other side. And we will also mix like a thinner version here of the base tone and use that to kind of blend out the color that we just painted here. And I think this is actually quite suitable for our highlight that we have on here. There's still like little bits visible here where we have the first highlight layer and the second, but we can really nicely work that in with the wood grain. Okay, so we have to wait until this here is fully dry, and we'll be back to establish first bits of the wood grain. Okay, now that the color is dry, we can continue, and as I said before, we will start introducing a little bit of that wood grain. We're doing that with a slightly more opaque paint than before, so we're working with a medium base tone consistency for that, and we're doing straight, more or less straight lines here along the line, and I'm not trying to get like a line on the whole lines, but just half of it should be good for the beginning. And you can see, just with like natural wood, they're not straight, but I think this is quite okay here, and you can see in areas where we have more space we can detail out the grain a bit more. Also something like this here, like a mistake, a darker dot here could be very nice as just the center here of where you would have like a hole from a twig. And this is already quite interesting, but we have to definitely also add like a little bit more contrast later on. I'm continuing here, adding also the same kind of lines in the shadow area with a slightly darker shade. And you can see here where we have these gaps from our layering before, we can just easily cover that by introducing like a light line that just covers that transition area. Okay, I'll continue with the wood grain and we'll be back for the next step. Alright. So I continued with the wood grain also here on the upper part. It's kind of hard to stabilize it here just on that cork, so I just placed it on the table to continue with the freehand work of the lines. And one thing that I want to introduce now is a swirl of like red paint going up the lens, and I think that will be kind of tricky to balance that just freehand, but we will give it a try. So we will be working with some of that red that we've also used in the face. It's kind of like a pinkish cooler red, and we will mix that with some of the red oxide and some black. We're working with a medium layer consistency, and we're just starting here, down here, where I'm pretty sure where I want that line to be. You can see because the paint was just right consistency wise, we can still see the wood grain underneath. That was just what I was going for. So I'm continuing here. Here on the top to make sure to have it still a bit visible here. So I just went ahead and thinned down the paint a little. Okay, I will just continue like that. I'm pretty sure we can just show you that in the speed up. So just making sure that we get a nice distribution here of the stripes, and we can think of adding a second color in between. Alright. Alright, so I continued with the stripes here on the upper side of our lens, and I initially thought I would place it here over that shoulder, but actually looking at this position here, I actually like it a lot more of how it captures the attention between the strong highlights in the eyes and like kind of getting back the view here, following that lens towards the torso. So I would just place it here, glue it in place, and we can do some final adjustments on some of the wood grain and some shadow. Alright, this is how the figure looks now with the lens in place, and I really like the look of that. Very charming. I think we should just detail out the lens a little bit more. So let's zoom in here. And I think an area like this here, where we have like a sculpted scratch, is also an area that is good to detail out a little bit more. So I'm doing a little bit black, adding it here to the base color to first get that scratch in here. Then we're working a bit with our base tone, because if you imagine that ship would have definitely happened, or that cut would have definitely happened after the red color was applied. So we're just painting a bit of the wood color here on top, just if the red paint would have shipped off around the cut. We're also adding a bit of white here to be able to continue our highlight. We're also adding a bit of white here to our the side to our red, and we're adding a bit more of the red oxide and a bit of the base color. Get like a reddish highlight tone. We can use that to emphasize a little bit also some of that wood grain in areas where it got a little lost here in the highlight area. Adding a bit more white here to also just dab a little here along that splintered line of paint. Alright, I've zoomed out again a little, and you can see here in the back of the palette I've added some Army Painted dark tone, and the dark tone is really like a black wash, and as we don't want it to be all that neutral in color, I've just added a little bit of the orange rust from Secret Weapon. That should be good. And you can see here we're working with somewhat like a heavy base tone consistency, and we will apply that here in the shadow area. And the nice thing is, because the wash is translucent, we can just apply it over both the red stripes and also the wood to give it like a very nice and matching shadow tone. Just cleaning off the edges here a little with a wet brush. And we're continuing also here along that side. mind just cleaning off the edges again. Okay, so I really like how the shadow looks now. Even though we have like the details fading a bit in the shadows, we still have that lovely wood grain that we see. And yeah, this concludes the journey here for our bust. And I think now it's time to enjoy that figure here in the turntable. Alright, thanks for watching and thanks for your support.